Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you could join us today. If you're listening to this, you're probably trying to figure out exactly what is happening in the world right now.
Yeah, it's a confusing time.
It really is, especially when it comes to the bizarre state of the economy and this rapid acceleration of technology. So today, our mission is to make sense of the current economic reality of early 2026.
Right.
And we're doing that by looking at two seemingly completely different but actually deeply connected sources.
Yes. On one side of the desk, we have the Bureau of Labor Statistics Producer Price Index.
The PPI?
Exactly, the PPI for January 2026. And on the other side, we have NVIDIA's absolutely staggering Q4 and fiscal 2025 financial results.
It is quite the stack of reading for today. But I want to pose a question to you, the listener. How do plummeting egg prices on one hand and the rise of something called reasoning AI on the other tell the exact same story about our economy?
It sounds like a joke setup, but it's really not.
No, it's not. To help set the baseline for all this data, I've got our resident expert guide here with me to sift through the noise. It is so great to have you sitting across from me today.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. I've been digging through these numbers all week, and the divergence we are seeing right now between the physical world and the digital world is just historically significant. I'm really looking forward to tearing into this data.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to start with the macro picture. The Producer Price Index. For anyone who needs a quick refresher or, maybe hasn't looked at a BLS report since their college macroeconomics class.
Which is probably most people.
Right.
Okay.
The PPI measures the average change over time in the selling prices received by domestic producers for their output. Think of it as wholesale inflation. It's the inflation businesses see before the costs get passed on to you at the grocery store or the gas pump. So what are the top-line numbers we are looking at for January 2026?
So the headline figure released by the BLS is that final demand prices rose 0.5% in January, and that's on a seasonally adjusted basis. Okay. If we zoom out and look at the unadjusted 12-month period ending in January 2026, the overall wholesale inflation increase was 2.9%.
Which doesn't sound crazy.
No, it doesn't. On the surface, a 2.9% annual increase might look like a fairly standard, mildly elevated inflation reading. It's hovering near historical target ranges. But when you look under the hood of that single number, that average completely masks a massive foundational split in what is actually happening in the supply chain.
I noticed that immediately. The data shows that the physical world and the service world are moving in completely opposite directions right now.
Yes.
Like the index for final demand goods actually went down by 0.3% in January. But the index for final demand services, that went up by 0.8%.
Right.
Which the BLS report explicitly notes is the largest single-month increase we've seen since July of 2025.
It's a huge divergence.
Let's look at the physical goods side first. Why did the wholesale price of physical goods fall so noticeably?
It was almost entirely driven by the raw physical inputs of everyday life. The index for final demand energy dropped 2.7%, and prices for final demand foods decreased 1.5%.
Wow.
Yeah, this isn't just a statistical blip based on one weird commodity. It's a broad-based easing in the physical economy. The pressure on tangible materials is releasing.
And the specific details from the BLS report are so relatable. We're talking about the things you, the listener, actually buy or consume every single day.
Exactly.
Wholesale gasoline plummeted 5.5% in just 1 month. Chicken eggs got cheaper. Fresh fruits and melons got cheaper. There's even a stat in the intermediate unprocessed goods sector, which tracks raw materials before they get heavily manufactured, showing that the price of raw milk dropped a whopping 9.8%.
Which is incredible.
Though I have to admit, I'm still waiting for my local grocery store to get that memo. My morning latte certainly isn't 10% cheaper yet.
No, definitely not yet. But that lag is exactly why the PPI is such a fascinating leading indicator. The physical building blocks of the economy are deflating at the producer level, which should eventually trickle down to the consumer.
Fingers crossed.
Right. But then we flip to the services side of the report, which is where the inflation is currently hiding in plain sight. You mentioned services were up 0.8% overall.
Yeah.
That increase was heavily driven by what the BLS calls trade services, where margins jumped 2.5% across the board.
Let's pause there and break down trade services margins for a second because it sounds like dense accounting jargon.
It does.
If I understand it correctly, trade indexes measure the changes in margins received by wholesalers and retailers. So if a company buys a server from a manufacturer for $1,000 and sells it to a local business for $1,200, that $200 is the margin.
Exactly.
The BLS is saying that the middleman's cut, the cost of simply acquiring things to do business, is what's actually inflating.
That is the exact mechanism at play. And within that category, there is one massive, highly specific data point in this report that we absolutely need to highlight. Over 20% of that entire January increase in final demand services is attributable to just one single subcategory.
Wait, a single category drove a fifth of the entire national service sector inflation. What was it?
It was a 14.4% jump in margins for professional and commercial equipment wholesaling.
14.4.
A 14.4% spike in a single month. What's fascinating here is what this tells us about the broader economy. The basic raw materials of the physical economy, the milk, the eggs, the gas, are easing. But the cost of acquiring commercial equipment, the cost for a business to upgrade its technology and actually operate in the modern marketplace is absolutely surging.
But a 14.4% jump in commercial equipment margins in 1 month doesn't happen because companies are buying slightly nicer office chairs or replacing their break room microwaves.
No, definitely not.
What on earth are these businesses buying that's driving prices up that fast?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question. The BLS data tells us businesses are paying a massive premium for commercial equipment. But to find out what that equipment actually is, we have to step outside the government data and look at the corporate sector.
Which brings us to our second source. Because if you want to understand what kind of commercial equipment is commanding that kind of premium in early 2026, you have to look at the biggest commercial equipment supplier on planet Earth right now, NVIDIA.
The timing of these two reports is what makes this deep dive so compelling. The NVIDIA earnings report covers their fourth quarter, which ended January 26, 2025.
So it's perfectly aligned.
Exactly. This data was being generated at the exact same time the BLS was tracking that massive 14.4% wholesale margin spike.
Let's get into the NVIDIA numbers because they are just mind-boggling. We are looking at their fiscal 2025 results. They just reported a record full-year revenue of $130.5 billion. That is up 114% year over year.
Unbelievable growth.
Think about a company of that massive scale more than doubling its total revenue in just 12 months. And for the fourth quarter alone, their revenue was $39.3 billion.
To truly understand the scale of that $39.3 billion quarter, we have to look past their total revenue and focus entirely on their data center division. This is the arm of the company that designs and sells the massive AI supercomputers to big tech and enterprise clients.
Right.
Data center revenue for Q4 hit a record $35.6 billion. That is up 93% from a year ago. If you do the math, the data center division is now essentially the entirety of the company's revenue engine.
I see the $35.6 billion, but let's contextualize that for the listener. Who is actually spending that kind of money in a 3-month window? You don't just put a $1 billion supercomputer on a corporate credit card.
No, you don't.
Where is all this hardware physically going?
It is going straight into the foundation of the next iteration of the internet. The earnings report details that NVIDIA is heavily partnered on the Stargate project.
Oh, Stargate.
Yeah. For those who haven't been following the absolute frenzy in the tech infrastructure space, Stargate is an estimated $500 billion project. It's largely reported as a joint venture involving Microsoft and OpenAI to build the largest, most densely packed AI supercomputer in human history.
$500 billion for a single computing environment. I remember reading that a project of that scale requires its own dedicated nuclear power plants just to keep the servers running and the cooling systems from melting down.
That's the reality of this hardware. And it's not just Stargate. NVIDIA is supplying their new GB200 systems to all the major cloud providers simultaneously. We're talking Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, Oracle.
Everyone.
Everyone. Every major player that hosts the cloud infrastructure that your apps, your banking, and your company's software run on is buying these commercial systems as fast as the supply chain can physically manufacture them.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we have to ask why these companies are suddenly spending so much more. They were already buying AI chips by the truckload in 2023 and 2024.
Right.
The whole world was talking about generative AI back then.
True.
Why the massive leap in hardware demand right now in early 2026? The answer is buried in a quote from NVIDIA's founder and CEO, Jensen Huang, right at the top of the earnings release.
I love this quote.
It's so revealing. He said, and I quote, "Demand for Blackwell is amazing as reasoning AI adds another scaling law. Increasing compute for training makes models smarter, and increasing compute for long thinking makes the answer smarter."
That single sentence from Huang is the master key to understanding the entire 2026 tech economy. And it directly explains our PPI inflation data. Let's break down what he actually means by reasoning AI and long thinking, because it's a fundamental shift from how AI used to work. For the last few years, the AI we've been using, like the early iterations of ChatGPT or Claude, was trained on massive amounts of data upfront. When you asked it a question, it basically predicted the next best word to give you an answer instantly.
Right. It took a lot of computing power to train initially,
Yeah.
but not a tremendous amount to actually generate the answer for the user.
Exactly. It was fast. You typed a prompt, and a second later you had an essay. But it could also hallucinate, make silly logic errors, or just confidently lie to you because it wasn't actually thinking. It was just predicting text patterns.
Right.
But this new paradigm, what the industry is calling agentic AI, or models capable of long thinking, operates on a completely different architecture. When you give these new models a complex problem, they don't just spit out the first statistical prediction, they literally stop and think. They break the problem down into sequential steps, they test different solutions internally, they check their own work for errors, and they might spend seconds, minutes, or even hours processing before they finally give you the output.
So to use an analogy, it's the difference between asking someone to name the capital of France, which is instant recall,
Right.
versus asking someone to solve a complex multivariable calculus equation. For the calculus problem, you have to sit down with scratch paper, work through the steps, erase mistakes, and try again until you prove the answer.
That is a perfect analogy. And working through those steps on that digital scratch paper requires a monumental amount of compute power at the exact moment you ask the question. Every second the AI spends thinking is burning through server processing power, electricity, and hardware bandwidth.
Oh, I see.
That is the new scaling law Huang is talking about. Before, you only needed massive compute to train the AI in the lab. Now, you need massive compute to run the AI out in the real world every single time a business uses it for a complex task.
That makes so much sense.
This shift from training compute to inference compute explains why the demand for their new Blackwell AI supercomputers is unprecedented. They achieved billions of dollars in sales in just the first quarter the architecture was available.
It's a completely new layer of digital infrastructure. But as we move beyond the data center, the NVIDIA report shows a really fascinating shifting tech landscape. Because historically, NVIDIA wasn't known for enterprise data centers or Stargate supercomputers.
No, they were the gaming company.
Right. They were the consumer company that made the graphics cards so you could play high-end PC games. But I was looking at the rest of the balance sheet and I noticed something weird. If compute is in such high demand, why did their gaming revenue drop?
It's a great question.
It went down 22% from Q3 to Q4, landing at $2.5 billion. And it's down 11% from a year ago.
It's a great observation, and that drop is especially notable considering the timing. During this exact quarter, they had just launched their highly anticipated new consumer graphics cards, the GeForce RTX 5090 and 5080. The report specifically notes these new cards deliver up to a 2x performance improvement over the prior generation. Historically, a hardware launch with that kind of performance leap would cause a massive spike in consumer gaming revenue.
So why didn't it? Shouldn't gamers and PC enthusiasts be driving that number up, regardless of what the enterprise data centers are doing?
You would think so, but the contraction sequentially shows a real plateau in the traditional consumer hardware market. Part of it is macroeconomic. Even with everyday goods getting cheaper, discretionary spending on a $2,000 graphics card is a tough sell for the average consumer right now.
That's true.
But more importantly, NVIDIA's focus and their supply chain allocation has aggressively shifted away from the consumer desk and into the corporate server rack.
But they easily absorb that gaming drop somewhere else, right?
Right.
Because they're pushing into the physical world now. It's not just cloud servers, it's tangible machines.
Yes, and this is where we start to see the AI revolution bleeding out of the cloud and into the real world. The drop in gaming revenue was completely overshadowed by the surge in their automotive and robotics sector.
Okay.
That division surged 103% year over year to $570 million in Q4. Full year revenue for automotive rose 55% to $1.7 billion.
What exactly are they selling to car and robotics companies? Because a car company isn't buying a $500 billion Stargate server.
No, they are buying the localized brains for autonomous machines. NVIDIA is providing the entire software and hardware stack for what they call physical AI. The earnings report gives some amazing specific examples of how this is being deployed.
Oh,
Yeah, Toyota, which is the world's largest automaker by volume, is building its next-generation vehicles on the NVIDIA Drive AGX Orin platform. They are also partnering with Hyundai to deploy cutting-edge robotics in their actual manufacturing plants. And perhaps most importantly for the long term, NVIDIA launched something called the Cosmos platform.
I was looking at their new Cosmos platform, and what struck me wasn't just the technical specs, but the client list. The report mentions it's already being adopted by leading robotics and autonomous companies like 1X, Agile Robots, Huawei, and Uber.
It's a huge list.
It feels less like they are just selling chips and more like they are trying to become the fundamental operating system for the physical world.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, NVIDIA is executing a monumental once-in-a-generation pivot. They are actively transitioning from being a consumer gaming company that happens to make powerful chips into the foundational backbone of global physical and agentic AI infrastructure.
Wow.
They are building the reasoning engines that will power corporate strategy in the cloud while simultaneously building the literal brains for the robots that will manufacture our goods and the autonomous systems that will drive our logistics networks.
Okay, let's unpack this. So what does this all mean for you? If you are listening to this on your commute, trying to make sense of your portfolio, managing a small business, or just trying to budget your weekly grocery run, how do these two incredibly dense reports, the BLS wholesale inflation data and the NVIDIA earnings blowout, actually connect to your life?
They connect by showing us a crystal clear picture of a bifurcating economy. We are essentially living in two different economic realities running on parallel tracks right now.
Okay.
On one hand, we have the traditional physical economy. The PTI data proves that the baseline inputs for this economy are easing. The wholesale gas for your car, the raw milk and eggs for your fridge, the energy to heat your home. The raw costs of these tangible items are deflating at the producer level.
Which, to be fair, is a huge relief. If you're a consumer who has been squeezed by supply chain inflation for the last few years, or a small business owner whose physical overhead has been crushing your margins, that easing in the physical world is desperately needed good news.
It absolutely is. But on the other hand, we have the technological and commercial economy, which is operating like a rocket ship. Businesses of all sizes are looking at the landscape and realizing that if they don't integrate these new reasoning AI models, if they don't upgrade their commercial equipment to handle agentic AI to optimize their workflows, they are going to be left in the dust by competitors who do.
So they have to buy in.
They have to. So they are paying massive premiums to acquire this tech, regardless of the markup. That's exactly why the PPI shows a 14.4% single-month jump in wholesale margins for commercial equipment. The middlemen are charging a premium because the demand is inelastic. And that's why NVIDIA is pulling in $35.6 billion in a single quarter just from their data center division.
It's a fundamental shift in where money is flowing. The inflation we are seeing at the producer level isn't coming from the grocery aisle or the gas pump anymore. It's coming from the global corporate race to build the next generation of AI and the massive margins associated with acquiring that advanced technology.
Precisely.
If you're running a business today, your physical energy bill might be down, but your IT, software, and infrastructure upgrade bill is going through the roof.
And here is the kicker for business owners and investors. Because these long-thinking models require so much more compute power to operate every single time you ask them a question, the demand for this hardware isn't a one-time capital expenditure.
Oh.
It's not like buying a tractor. It is becoming a continuous baseline utility cost for doing business in 2026 and beyond. You have to keep paying for the compute to keep the AI thinking.
It is a staggering reality to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
We are living in an economy where the wholesale price of raw milk can drop nearly 10% in a single month, while simultaneously a single tech company, NVIDIA, is casually projecting in their outlook that they expect to pull in $43 billion in revenue in their next quarter alone.
Just incredible.
It really is an unprecedented moment in economic history.
It really is. And looking at these two reports side by side leaves us with something I've been thinking about all week. This raises an important question for the future. As these agentic AI and long-thinking models become integrated into absolutely every industry, from Toyota's automated factories to the logistics networks moving those cheaper groceries to your local store, the demand for processing power is going to become as essential as water or electricity.
Meaning businesses will have to buy it no matter the price just to keep the lights on and the doors open.
Exactly. So the provocative thought I'd leave you with is this. As the physical economy continues to ease and the digital economy consumes everything, Will AI compute power eventually replace things like crude oil or electricity as the fundamental baseline metric we use to measure the health, the output, and the inflation of the entire global economy? If compute truly is the new oil, NVIDIA isn't just a tech company anymore. They are the new standard oil of the 21st century.
Now, that is a thought to mull over. Compute as the ultimate macroeconomic indicator. We will definitely be keeping an eye on how these new scaling laws change the hardware market and your wallet in the coming months. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. As always, we encourage you to keep questioning the numbers behind the headlines and look for those hidden connections that explain the world around us. We'll catch you on the next one.